Hi, I'm Angelina with Quality Sewing and Vacuum, and this Tuesday on How Do I, we're going to talk about how do I quilt my quilts at home. So I want to show you one of my favorite sewing machine accessories, which is the Grace Cutie Frame. And we're going to go through the process of putting a quilt on there, doing some quilting, and repositioning it. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Carrie's here and she'll let me know what your questions are. But we're going to talk about the Cutie Frame. The Cutie Frame is a sewing machine accessory and it will work with almost every sewing machine that's out there. So we have a Bernina 590 on here right now. And you can see that the Cutie Frame is about 4 feet wide. It's like 48 inches. So I get a good amount of space that I can quilt at a time. It's a portable system. It took me less than 5 minutes to disassemble this, walk it over here to the corner and put it back together, and then get my sewing machine on it. It's very lightweight. It's easy. I was able to do that myself in less than 5 minutes. So it's a very portable system. We are using a Bernina 590 on it today because the Bernina 590 has the BSR stitch regulator and we all want that beautiful, precise stitch. There is a stitch regulator that will work with most sewing machines called the Grace Store Stitch Elite Stitch Regulator, and that's available right now. So depending on what sewing machine you have, the compatibility and details are listed on our website. So the Cutie Frame, this piece comes out, this bar will come out, this piece will come out. So it's really easy to adjust. Slide that forward. Move my quilt real quick. So you can see how easy it is to disassemble for that portability and then reassemble for when you want to quilt. The nice thing about this system is that it'll work with almost every sewing machine, so you don't have to buy a separate machine to use it. You can use your sewing machine. It comes with all the clamps that you're going to need to hoop your quilt in here and get started with quilting. Now, I did actually bring one of my quilts with me today to quilt to show you. My friend just had a baby, so I had to whip up something for her new little girl. So we do have a fun little new baby quilt to quilt today. So it's made with a couple charm packs. We are going to get it on here. Now you'll notice I'm kind of holding it all willy-nilly, right? And there's no pins in here. I like to use Free Fuse from Quilter Select to baste my quilts. It is an adhesive powder that you're going to sprinkle between your batting and your fabric in order to fuse them together, and then you just heat set it with your iron. This is the Free Fuse from Quilter Select, and I think I've had mine for like 2 years. I mean, it little goes a long way and it really lasts. My quilt doesn't have any pins in it and I can shake it and it's not coming apart. So just wanted to show you that because you do want to have your quilt basted before you put it on the frame. On this Cutie Frame, it's a clamping frame, right? Not a rolling frame. So the machine isn't going to roll all 3 layers together for you. You're going to have to put it on there partly assembled. So that's why I wanted to show you the Free Fuse. Now I know that my quilt is going to be used in this direction. That's how I made it. But in deciding how to quilt this, I've decided I'm going to quilt it sideways to make it a little easier on myself, because there will be less rehooping because I'll be able to quilt more at a time. And when I turn it sideways, I have these nice rows. So when I put it on here and I'm like, how much space do I really have to quilt? I'm going to have a nice area that I can see not past this line. That'll kind of make sense when we do it here. So let's load our quilt. So we're going to start by just kind of laying it out here. And I know that I want to be able to quilt from end to end. So I'm going to kind of lay it right here and I'm going to move my machine over to see how far it'll go. Oh, you can tell the little hook is hooked on it. There we go. And then I like to start by clamping the back on. So the Cutie comes with all the clamps that you're gonna need, and they snap on very snug. Now, I'm gonna kind of smooth my quilt out so that I have a nice top surface. And I can see right here that it's gonna be a little bit crooked, so let me just loosen that up real quick. And now, because it's nice and smooth, I'm gonna put the front clamps on. All right, so we're almost there. I've got all of this quilt right here, and this quilt is kind of covering my handles, and I need those. So this is where we make our favorite quilt burrito, but not a quilt burrito you have to sling over your shoulder like if you're quilting this on your flatbed machine. This just makes it so much easier. And that is where our elastics come in. You couldn't see it when I was putting on, but these Cutie clamps have a little ridge on the inside, and the elastic bungees hook in there to help hold that quilt burrito out of the way. I have little clamps for the side so that I can secure that to make sure I have nice tension. And we have elastics on the back. They're a little loose right now, but we're gonna put them up so they don't hit the bed of the machine. They can be tightened up very simply. Now, as we quilt and shift the quilt and reposition, this bigger burrito on the front will become the bigger roll up on the back there. So that's why we have elastics on the front and back to help secure the quilt there. Now I can test to see where I'm gonna quilt. What was that, 5 minutes? How easy was that to load that? So fast. So I can see that I can stitch from the top of my quilt right down here about to the bottom of this row. So that's like a good visual reminder for me of the space that I have to quilt. Yeah.
Yeah, so Sally is asking, does the fusing powder gum up or interfere with the needle when you quilt?
Oh gosh, if it did that, I would have stopped using it years ago. No, it's super easy to use. It sprinkles nice and evenly. You can refill the bottles, so it's very like eco-friendly. You don't have to have conscious like packaging all the time. And this, like I was shaking it, the quilt wasn't budging at all. This is still nice and smooth. I've never had it gum up the needle on my sewing machine. If I was to quilt this like with my walking foot, never had it give me a problem there, or on my long arm, or on the Cutie Frame. It's a really great product. And I feel okay using it around my pets too, right? You know how your pets are like always trying to get in your business when you're sewing? I don't want to put aerosol spray in the air, so the free fuse is great. So now I'm going to kind of look to see how far I put it down here, what my space is, and I'm going to get my quilt basted in because I don't want it to slip. I mean, it's not going to slip because of the free fuse, but just kind of old habit. I'm a long armor. I like to baste things, so. So on this Bernina, I'm going to control it with my hand on the front there. I'm going to go bring up my bobbin thread. And we're going to press. my edge there.
So Angelina, so you were doing that two-handed. So your bottom hand, that's the one that's driving your sewing machine, correct?
Yeah, so the handles are right down here, and I wanted to use one to kind of guide it straight, and then I was, kind of a nervous Nelly, just had to guide it myself with my hand up here. We all get like that. So let's bring that up. Bring my bobbin thread back up. I've got my snips. All right, so we are going to get quilting. Fix my clamp here. All right, so I'm just gonna do a simple all over kind of meander pattern because it'll be really easy for me to be able to do that all over this quilt in the kind of zoning. That's what we call adjusting the quilt on a cutie frame, is zoning. So prior to actually starting, you wanna kind of come up with a plan of your zones. I find it easy to kind of think of it in quadrants. I go from the left to the right, from the top to the bottom, right? So after I finish this area, I'm gonna readjust it and do the edge that I can't reach over there, and then I'll roll it forward.
So this is basically free motion, correct?
Yes, I am doing free motion quilting with the stitch regulator. Edge, so we're gonna stop. Needle up, bring my bobbin thread up, just like I would do on my normal quilting machine. Now we reposition. We've got most of our first row done. We're gonna have to get a little bit over here. Scissors down.
And if you wanted to, while you were doing that, you could have used rulers, correct? So you can do free motion, or you could have used rulers.
Absolutely. Yep. Now, this Bernina here has about a 9-inch throat space, so it gives me about 6 inches I can quilt at a time. I don't want to kind of overshoot my area, and then as I get quilting and the burrito gets a little bit bigger, I start losing a little space. So I want to make sure that I'm generous with my space and give myself some allowance to be able to adjust. So I still want to get my edge there, so we're going to slide this down.
So this is where you were talking, you go left to right. So now you're shifting down so that you can complete the right-hand side before you roll up.
Yep, yep, because I got too much space down here. Clamp. Now I'm gonna have a little bit of space right here, and this is where you could use a leader, or if you had made your backing just big enough. I've got about 5 inches of space here, so if I used pinned on like an extra piece of fabric, I could clamp it over here for more tension, but since it's just a small area, I think we're gonna be okay. Here, my edge over here. Give it another little roll.
And what size quilt could you do with this? Are you limited by space, or can
You're
you do?
actually not. You can do any size quilt on here. You're just gonna have to adjust it as you go. And you can quilt more space the bigger the throat on your machine is. So if you're someone who has a machine that's got 11 inches or more of throat space, this is gonna be a fantastic option for you, because you're gonna have to get to quilt like 8 or 9 inches at a time, which is a pretty generous path. Like, I have a long arm, and most of the time if I do a pantograph, it's only 9 inches anyway. So there's really not any difference the amount of space I can quilt at one time, other than having to shift it from left to right. But for the trade-off of this being so portable and easy to put in your house, it's totally worth it. So we are adjusted. So I'm going to go back down here, kind of lock our burrito back in place. And I'm gonna double check to see how far I can quilt. So I can go about midway through my next row, because yes, I wanna fill in this corner, but I also want to adjust as few times as possible, right? So I'm actually gonna finish this corner and then come down a little and do this portion, because that will help me quilt a little further in my quilt.
And what are you doing when you do that right there?
So I am bringing my bobbin thread up, so I don't have any threads dangling on the bottom, because I want to be able to just trim one side of my quilt, and I don't want to have any bird's nest on the back. The back of this quilt is like a white flannel, right? New baby, we don't have soft stuff. And I don't want to have like little bird's nests on the back, right? I want it to look real nice and professional. So let me press. Finish that corner. Come down a little. I'm just doing an easy kind of squiggly meander. Nothing too taxing, very easy, effective. It makes a really nice texture, especially for baby quilts. And that's the end of my space. We're going to turn that off, and then we'll readjust, do this little portion, and keep working our way down. Now you can tell, you might have noticed, some of you eagle-eyed watchers might have noticed that I kind of ran out of space when I hit right here, so I have 1 point. That's okay. This quilt is for a baby and my friend, and not a judge at a quilt show. So we're just going to keep going. in this case, I'm actually going to leave my needle in the quilt so when I adjust it, I can start right where I left off. Let's go back. So we've got our full space here. Secure the back on. Smooth it out. And re-roll. Any questions about the rolling process so far? It's pretty straightforward. After you do it a couple times, it becomes a lot easier. I mean, not that it's hard to start with, but I shouldn't say easier. You get faster. It just gets faster.
So how long did it take you to learn how to set up and use your Cutie Frame?
You know what? This is the second like full baby quilt that I've done. I do a lot of baby quilts. Not very long. I mean, admittedly, I do have an experience as a long armer, so I do feel comfortable with my free motion quilting skills. But honestly, you only get comfortable with your free motion skills as you free motion, right? You can't just read a book and then like, poof, you instantly know how to do it. You got to practice and get that muscle memory. If you have ever thought about getting a long arm, but the idea of long arming terrifies you because maybe you feel like you're not as good at it yet, this is a great step to getting comfortable with that. If you are good at free motion quilting on your flatbed machine and it's just maybe a little taxing on your shoulders, because sometimes it can be, honestly, we've got to fling a whole quilt over our shoulder and still manage to move it gracefully. That's hard. This is easy. So we're going to get started again. Right over to that edge. And it looks like I can get pretty close to the end of my block. So that's going to be kind of my reminder of how far I can quilt. And I'm going to just fill in my space. We're coming up on the end here, so I'm just going to stop. Now, if you're wondering, oh, well, Angelina's standing there and she's got her neck cranked over so she can look at it. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be that way for you. The Cutie can go on almost any flat surface. When I had this at my house, it was on my dining room table. We have it right now on a folding table. If I was doing this at home and not being filmed and not wanting Carrie to have to hurt her neck, I'd sit in a chair because then I can still reach the handles and I would have a better line of vision right here where the needle and my quilting are, or I would have it on a taller surface so that it would bring it more to my size, like to my line of sight. So it's very customizable. That's 2 full rows, and what we've got only 6 rows in the quilt, so we're a third of the way there. What's that, 20 minutes or so? Yeah. So now that you've seen how we adjust this and how easy it is to do, if you have any questions about this process, then come to your local Quality Sewing and Vacuum. We would love to show you the Cutie Frames in store. We would love to show you how your machine is going to work on it, or help you get a machine that's going to work a little bit better so that you can sew on here and not have to take your queen out of her sewing throne, right? So stop by your local quality sewing and vacuum today and check out this little cutie.